The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
And we are back with part 2 of our interview with Chubby Mermaid Brewing in Bonita Springs, Florida. This is the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. This is Dave, your host and author, checking in. Let's get right back to episode 190. This is going to be part 2 of our interview with Gary Fortin and Josh Hoover, co-founders and co-owners of the newest brewery in Bonita Springs, Chubby Mermaid. If you haven't listened to part 1, do recommend that you stop this, go back to episode 189, listen to that, and that'll give you all the information that you need to about this. So we're going to be talking about their opening. We're going to be talking about being a part of the Southwest Florida beer scene. And we're going to be talking about their gluten-free beers, and they are really gluten-free. This is not just brewing a normal beer and putting an enzyme in it to get rid of the gluten. This is radically different and kind of amazing. But enough from me. Why don't you listen to them? Gary, Josh, Florida Beer Podcast. Enjoy. So obviously the owner of this gorgeous campus, is what I'd call it, maybe was interested. What about the city? Because like you mentioned, obviously on the other side, ceremony was open, hop size was open, momentum was here. They built the gorgeous new facility and then handed it over to Riptide.
Correct.
How was Bonita Springs? How was Lee County?
I have nothing ill will to say about Bonita Springs. I think they are, I don't want to use the word progressive. I think that's the wrong word. They're receptive to the brew scene and they know what it's bringing to the city. And we've had some very good players here, like you just mentioned, and I would also say ceremony and hop-sized as well, which have shed a light on Bonita a little bit to some of the population that may not even come here. We've had people come from the East Coast just because they can hit 4 breweries in 3 miles, and that's we're bringing that to Bonita, and I think they recognize that. So I think that I'm going to say there are other cities in Florida where we've heard horror stories about permitting, licensing. Would you agree, Josh?
Yeah, well,
for us, it's been a non-issue.
Even back home, I mean, there became a point where Oceanside, where I came from, residents would say, "Oh no, not another brewery," and they would actually petition their city councils to not allow it, to stop it. We didn't even have a whiff of, maybe someone's going to resist us being here. Not from the city. No one had some campaign in the paper. There was no Facebook campaign, to try to stop. There's too many breweries in Bonita. Like, not a single whiff of that. So there was no resistance. Just fill out your paperwork correctly, pay your fees, and do things by the book, and you're good to go.
That's amazing. And at what time did you all decide to go full on manatee?
Oh.
Because Chubby Mermaid, do you want to go ahead and tell the story?
I can tell it.
The mermaid manatee connection.
So it was originally our name was going to be Tap Out Brewing. Okay, that was what I had come up with.
Wouldn't Tap Out, the clothing brand, have a bit of an issue with that?
Right. So mine was an actual tap that was pulled out, filling basically logo
Makes
was
sense.
filling a glass of beer. So anyway, I tried to trademark the name as I did with Chubby Mermaid, and of course the fitness folks there, Tap Out Fitness, sent their lawyer letters, and it was early on, and I was like, it's not worth fighting this. I'll just come up with another name. But that was way harder than I thought it was going to be, because every time I thought I had a name, I would Google it.
Yep, somebody's got it.
It's like, I don't know. If you think you have an original thought, Google it. You don't. And I tell people this all the time. So I was coming up duds for about 3 months, and my wife and I were running a 5K to save the manatees. And there was a little flag flyer in the trail, and it said, "Save the Chubby Mermaids." So when I got into the end of the race, I Googled that, and there were no breweries called Chubby Mermaid. So that was it. And then because my wife and I do love the manatees, it started sparking all kinds of ideas, like, manatee themed, aquatic theme, donate to Jimmy Buffett Foundation, yada, yada. And we had to figure out how much we were going to donate, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's how it came about.
That's kind of amazing. Has anybody come and complained thinking that you were making fun of larger people?
Nope.
Not a single person?
No, and Gary told me the name before I made the leap over here, and I didn't know, not being from here, not knowing.
I would assume, yeah, exactly.
I told him that I thought the name was going to be, sounds a little crass, and you might offend some people. And he showed me the logo, and instantly I go, oh, okay, that makes sense. So no, not a single one.
Because it was like, there's not a single mermaid in this building if it's not a manatee.
It's a manatee. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, they have a lot of nicknames, floaty potato, sea cow, whatever. But, I those didn't make good brew names.
Now,
we'll name some of our beers those. But for a business name, Chubby Mermaid was it.
That's kind of awesome. And so you're building, and you are building this. This facility is basically the work of your hands and the hands of, I guess, a couple of other people. That was...
professionals in here doing the professional stuff, but we were doing all the other stuff.
That's amazing. One of the things that I found interesting is that you basically shared every step of the process on social media. Were you at that time making the rounds to the beer festivals or whatnot with trials of what you had, or is that really the main, we are coming, here's how to get the word out over and over and over again?
In terms of people having our beer, we only did about three things.
Two or three.
It's like Brookside had their 1 year anniversary and invited us, and we poured beer there. Shoot, maybe only was 2. Oh, Roger up at 8 Foot invited us up to the Southwest Florida Brew Fest.
R.I.P. for 8 Foot.
Unfortunately, R.I.P.
Yeah. We love Roger.
And actually, we're going to get some of his kegs on Monday and bring them down. So we're going to have some 8 Foot brewing history here in the building for a while.
Yeah, I know. We're sad too.
Yeah.
I can't think of the third, but you're right. Yeah, 2 or 3 things where we were, giving people our beer. Otherwise, it was all social media, but the documentation of the process along the way came from us habitually doing videos for YouTube.
Just going to say that. It seems like you have a more savvy connection with social media through the YouTube videos and channels that you were cultivating, and you sort of knew that was something you had to do. Am I correct?
It grew a community on YouTube for dozens and, dare I say, probably hundreds of us over the last 10 to 15 years. And why wouldn't other people, just normal people who drink beer anywhere in the country or the world, want us? A lot of breweries don't put the behind the scenes stuff on. It's to no fault of their own. Maybe they just don't think it's important or don't even think of doing it. But that's the background we come from, and it worked for us, and people want to see it.
That's amazing. So, and I've always asked this question because I always find it interesting. You did not come into a brand new scene. There were a couple of players, not very many, but there were a couple. When you decided to come in and you decided to make the beers that you were going to make when you first opened and kind of create that sort of image for what Chubby Mermaid's beers were going to be, how did you decide that? Was this your background? Was this seeing what was around and what was either profitable or had not been done? What did that sort of process look like?
We're still trying to find our identity, but we do have 20 beers on tap, and Josh and I we looked at some of our recipes that him and I have either brewed together, or we have, some of my recipes, some of his recipes, and we've test batched them while at my house while we were, doing the construction here. And then we already had pretty much, I would say 80% of our initial tap list settled. And then we just did some final tweaking at the end based on what other, input we were getting from, the great folks over at Hop Size, or, by the way, very collaborative, Hop Size, Ceremony. Yeah, I can't say enough about these guys. They're wonderful.
So, yeah, the one thing that we settled on, too, was we wanted to have if we're going to have 20 taps, we want to have a wide variety. We didn't really plan on opening with 4 lagers. We opened with 4 lagers and 6 or 7 IPAs, but it wasn't 7 West Coast or 7 hazies. It was like 3 hazies, a West Coast, a a fruited one, a black IPA, and maybe there was one
The
other.
dark helmet.
Oh, right. So yeah,
Spartan
that's
beer.
part of the 4 lagers.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, there's 6 plus 4. We got 10. There's 9 more beers, that we settled on. I think it was the red ale and a few others. So a wide variety has seemed to
Plus the gluten-free stuff.
I have to talk about the gluten-free because I tried that the last time I was here. You would have had to tell me that it was gluten-free. But that took a long time to cultivate, and that's not exactly a cash cow for you, correct?
No, that was actually born out of determination and stubbornness on my part. I don't want to get into reasons, and Josh can reveal or not reveal, but I needed to be able to brew a gluten-free beer for a family member. And I wanted to try to conquer that because it was something I had never done before. And it was everything I was reading up on it. It was complex and it was a challenge. So,
and we're not talking about, because most gluten-free beers on the market are, let's make a normal beer, let's add the enzyme.
Correct.
It drops most of the gluten out. That is not what we're talking
That's
about.
reduced.
yeah, it's reduced. That's gluten reduced. That's not safe for someone who has true gluten allergies or has celiac disease. So we brew beer that is safe for that. We actually had it tested, but of course we're using grains that are not wheat, not barley. They're all coming from certified gluten-free sources, and we're using dedicated equipment. If not, we are soaking and sanitizing and pasteurizing the heck out of it to make sure that it is. So
What amazed me about that process is not the malt, but the yeast. And how the yeast comes with, like, liquid yeast.
Sure.
And how it's basically it blooms in gluten. Which I had no idea.
so you have to be careful too on the yeast that you get, because some of the yeast that's propagated in a gluten environment, we have to make sure the yeast we buy is even propagated in a gluten-free environment. So I know it's everything.
I had no idea how complex. What did it take to get to the point to where it was what it was? Because it is indistinguishable. It is phenomenal.
I will say our hazy is it'll fool everyone. That one will fool everyone.
That fooled everyone at Brookside, the 1-year anniversary.
Yeah.
We had a hazy on, they wanted it, and then we would tell them after, by the way, did you know this is a gluten-free beer? And they all were shocked.
Yeah. It looks like a hazy, smells like a hazy, tastes like a hazy, mouthfeel of a hazy. It's just you wouldn't know. And if there's anyone that has a very discerning palate and can pick up that gluten-free-ish thing that you pick up on a true gluten-free beer, the hops mask the hell out of it. So,
Gotcha. I'm definitely not going to be able to do something like that. So it's time to open Chubby Mermaid. What was the reaction from Southwest Florida?
Because we took so long to open, we didn't take too long, but we were flirting with that. To the point where you can only update a newsletter so much. You can only post on social media so much. And we kept the newsletter down to once every month or every 2 or 3 months, and the social media posts were like, okay, I'm not going to post every week. We're not going to post.
we didn't want an information overload.
Right.
Burnout or whatever. People just look at it after a while and go, oh, these guys again? When are they going to open?
Right. So, again, we got very close to, okay, yeah, you're going to open next month, or yeah, you're going to open in 2 months. And we flirted with that, but we had enough anticipation. We were giving people enough morsels along the way, and you have the right video or photo content and showing actual progress. And it goes back to what you were saying about showing the behind-the-scenes stuff on brew days. Well, yeah, let's show the behind-the-scenes stuff. A lot of breweries don't always do that along the way. There's nothing to hide. It's like, hey, here's where we're at. And so there was a lot of anticipation. And so we got slaughtered on opening weekend because people had been waiting for, a year, 18 months, what have you. And it was just good timing, too. I mean, it was end of October.
Yeah.
For some reason, there was a lot of people here.
Yeah, there was a line
just before
outside
the holidays.
door. Yeah, it was brutal. But when you launch with 19 out of 20 taps, people show up and they're wide-eyed and they're like, oh, do flights? So the flights slow you down. So everybody was ordering flights, not just one, but 4.
Oh, boy.
per group. It's like,
Basically, just give me one of everything.
yeah. And it was I'm not complaining, but it was causing a huge backlog because we were running out of glasses and, people were lining up, and I see people come and open the door, look around and turn around and walk away. And, it was nice to see all the people, but it was also discouraging to see people turn away. But fortunately, we've had people come back and say, "Oh, we were here that first day, and we turned around and left, but we knew why, and we wanted to come back." And they did.
Usually tell people, I go, "I apologize for that, but thank you for coming back and giving us another shot."
And what was the crowd like? What have the crowds been like in terms of, are you getting a lot of people that are vacationing in the area versus locals versus people that are coming down, over from Fort Lauderdale, down from Tampa, St. Pete? You've got basically 3 distinct groups. What has it been sort of like for you?
I haven't served anyone that I've known to be down here from Tampa, St. Pete area. Most of the people that I served from the north, you have? Okay.
Yeah, just maybe 1 or 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mostly Cape Coral, which is still a bit of a stretch, to come down here. But Cape Coral's dry now, pretty much, in terms of brewery scene. So now they're having to come down here to get that, fix, if they're not stopping in Fort Myers along the way. We've had people from the other coast, too.
Oh, yeah. Shout out to the Yeasty Bros.
Yeah, Yeasty Bros.
It's a brewery in Fort Lauderdale.
Actually, it's funny. Yeasty Brews, their head brewer, is our field producer.
Yeah. I always want to say bros.
Yeah.
That's funny. I didn't realize that they were over here.
Yeah, he popped in one day or one weekend.
Well, I had popped in, and this is kudos to this man. We were there, not Josh and I, but me and a couple other buddies. We went there probably a year before we even decided to order the equipment. I already knew I was going to open a brewery, but I hadn't even talked to Josh about it yet. So I had gone over there and just said, "Hey, the beers were good." So I was like, "Hey, is the brewer in?" And they're like, "Yeah, let me go get him." He came out and talked to him. He talked to me and he said, "You want to come back and see what's going on in the back?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." Him and I talked for hours, and I told him what I wanted to do. I was going to open a brewery. And at the time, I told him it was going to be Tap Out Brewing. We hadn't even come up with Chubby Mermaid yet. And when we opened, he showed up here like 3 weeks later. So he remembered. I don't know how he found out.
So to more to your question, too, so there is a good mix of definitely out-of-towners, locally in this region, right? We were talking about up north or on the other coast, but a good mix of locals in the surrounding neighborhoods even. I mean, the neighborhoods around us, but then also the neighboring towns and cities. But I wouldn't say, we couldn't say 50-50 yet on, half of them are locals, half of them are visiting seasonally. This time of year, sure, we're going to probably get more of an influx of seasonal residents.
60-40 favoring seasonals.
But we have seen a good amount of locals, and it kind of gives us hope for, come summertime, full-time residents, we're going to hopefully see these people more and more.
Obviously, you also have food, and that has been an interesting trend that a lot of breweries either are new and opening with a kitchen already in hand, or they're a little bit older and definitely put more focus on trying to bring something in, much more than just having a revolving slate of food trucks outside. They're trying to keep it inside. In fact, I've spoken to brewers who basically said, I was getting into this for the distribution business, and now I basically own a restaurant. And that's where the bread and butter comes from. When in the process did you decide we need to have a kitchen, and how did you develop that menu?
So this is where Josh and I digressed a bit at the beginning. He did not want a kitchen. I definitely wanted a kitchen for a couple of different reasons. But one, even prior to COVID, the kitchen, to me, keeps people here for that second beer, maybe the third beer. I don't want it to be a lost leader, but it doesn't need to make a ton of money. The focus is the beer. And if I can keep you here drinking beer, enjoying the beer, maybe having a snack or food, that's great. The problem is food trucks. Food trucks are very unreliable. You can't get a food truck at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. We have food 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. So we'll have people come in here at noon that they're frequent other breweries, they're not open yet, and they go, "Oh my God, look at the crowd you have in here. It's only 12 on a Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever." They're here for the food and a beer, not the other way around. But when COVID hit, that sealed the coffin for me because most of the businesses that didn't have food had to shut down. And I'm like, well, the next pandemic that comes around, I better be prepared. So food is definitely in there.
It is kind of nice, the opening earlier so we get the lunch crowd or just the pre-lunch crowd. I was just thinking about this. So the breweries around here and a lot of breweries around the country, they'll open at 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock. So we'll get that 2 to 4 hour head start on everyone else. But the other thing is sometimes they're coming in here to put a base layer of food in, and we're at the start of their day, so they're not at the belligerent point yet. So we get fresh faces and not a bad crowd.
That's
with
funny.
that too.
I never even thought of that.
Yeah. So they'll plan their day coming into, Bonita. If they're going to hit the 4 breweries, they may hit us, like you said, first, depending on part of the day they come. But we're in their rotation because we have food. So it's sort of almost like this guarantee thing. And then a lot of people come up to me and say, oh, my God, how much more work was it to put the kitchen in? It was a lot of work. Definitely was a lot of work, which is why I understand why breweries don't want to do it. It's a pain in the butt. And then the next question out of their mouth might be, do you regret it? And my answer is always, I would have regretted not doing it.
Gotcha. Especially, I think the brewery game has changed permanently. And I think you're right. COVID did a lot of it.
Yeah.
Not just here, but everywhere else. Now, obviously, you've been serving the community, but what about using the community and not just inspiring the recipes, but also increasing the recipes? And I mention that because in this complex, you have a coffee roaster not too far away. Disappointed they're not open today, but you have a coffee roaster here. Have you started conversations with them? Have you started conversations with some of the agricultural people that are in the region?
I'll get to your question here, but as far as the agricultural part, where are you going with that?
You got a lot of farmers in the area.
Sure. Okay.
Have you ever thought about using their produce, something locally?
Got it. Okay. Got you to that
locally
angle.
grown in your beers?
Our coffee roaster, Grumpy Goat Coffee here, Brian was the first one to reach out to us. First anyone really besides our landlord to reach out to us and say welcome, and followed up quickly by let me know if you need any help. And it was genuine. And he's been that way for the better part of a year or more now. And it's a great relationship. He's a great advocate for the community. Not only that, but also for this Causeway Commercial Business Park or whatever they're calling it. He is the glue that kind of joins all these businesses together, and he brings other businesses in. He'll do monthly, it's not a farmer's market thing, but it's a sampling thing. He calls it the Wandering Goat. And he'll bring in anyone with, sorbet to special electrolyte water to the physical therapy, massage place down the street. They're not even in our park necessarily, but he gets people together and it helps highlight the other businesses. And we partook in that a couple days before our main opening, and he's a great advocate for Bonita and this park. So he was the first one. And then on the farmer note, not so much with regards to utilizing local produce, but that is a great idea. We may have to look into that. But I didn't expect this to actually happen. Because I'm not from here, so I don't know. I didn't know how many farmers are around here. But we have a couple of farmers that come down from Cape Coral regularly to pick up our grain to feed their cows and their pigs. And so it is one of the guys, I'll just say his last name is Brady. Brady came down and gave us steaks from the cows that we're helping to feed.
That sounds amazing. I've actually seen pig roasts like
Nice.
that. Breweries do pig roasts, and the pig was raised on the grain from the brewery.
Yeah. So to finish up, I think you may have forgotten that thought, but we'd done a collaboration with the Grumpy Goat, and we called it the Chubby Goat, and we have a wee heavy that's in coffee infused, and then we worked with Brian to come up with a type of coffee and a roast level, and we settled in on a Vietnamese coffee with a blonde roast. And that's a beer that we had on tap. We only have it in cans at the moment, which we're getting very low on. But yeah, it's called the Grumpy Goat.
And yeah, the naming, you want to talk about coming up with a name that's not
Chubby Goat,
taken
sorry.
or whatever, or too similar to something else. Riptide has the Grumpy Blonde. And so I didn't want to do Grumpy Mermaid. And so I said, okay, well, let's flip the words. Let's call it Chubby Goat. That's actually funnier. And hopefully someday when our comrades, Swamp Cat Brewing up in Fort Myers, we've talked about, okay, well, when we collaborate on a beer with the Swamp Cat guys, the Florida Panther, what are we going to call that? We've come up with Swamp Mermaid or Chubby Cat or something like that. Having a mascot for a brewery, I'll say this, is very useful and it's very easy to market, especially if you make it fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've actually turned that mascot into a source of philanthropy, and you continue to support the Save the Mermaid Club to this day.
We're only paying by the quarter, so we're We just finished our first quarter.
But that is still something that is just going to be a part of what Chubby Mermaid is.
Oh, yes.
This is who you are. You will always be.
Yes. Yeah.
Any word on maybe a potential collaboration with them? Like
other than sending them money,
Other
I
than
don't know.
sending them yeah.
I mean, I'm waiting for them to respond, actually, but we reached out to them previously before we started and said, hey, this is what we're going to do, or we want to donate. And they said, fine, here's our user agreement, yada, yada. We've sent that to them, and I'm just waiting for a response if they want more collaboration other than the financial donation. Yeah.
So I will leave you with this question. Got a couple months behind you. You've obviously gone through the hard part of opening and everything. Was Bonita the right move?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. We love holding down the south end of Old 41, right beneath Riverside Park, where that's booming. The communities embrace us as well. But absolutely, Bonita was the right place.
Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there we go with Chubby Mermaid Brewing. Like I said, they're going to be a part of the Bonita Brew Fest. As we are recording this, the Bonita Brew Fest is tomorrow. So hopefully I have been able to get out there and visit with them and a lot of other people from the Gulf Coast of Florida. To listen to that episode when it gets released and so many others, make sure to follow us on social media. We are at Florida Beer Blog on Instagram and Threads. We are at FL Beer Blog on Facebook. And we are still working on getting some others as well. So just hang tight with us. We are always on the internet at floridabeerblog.com and floridabeerpodcast.com. And you can email us at floridabeerblog@gmail.com. When you go to floridabeerpodcast.com, you will find that we are a proud member of the Florida Podcast Network, a collection of amazing Florida-based podcasts, and we do recommend that you check them out at floridapodcastnetwork.com. Remember, we are on pretty much every single podcasting app you can think of. We're on Apple's, we're on Amazon's, we're on YouTube's, we are on iHeart's, we are on Spotify's, we are on pretty much everything. And you can even listen to us online, obviously. If you are listening to us on a podcasting app, please make sure to subscribe. And if you can, leave us a great 5-star review. That really does help us get the word out. And that is very helpful, very much appreciated. Our intro announcer is Jeff Brozovich. Field producer is Steve Pekala. Executive producer for the Florida Podcast Network and Grand High Poobah is Jemmy Legagneur. This is Dave, your host and author. Thank you so much for listening, and drink Florida Craft.